Alright guys, so today's video is kind of inspired by Gerald Undone's video on camera reviews. And the reason I wanted to do this video is I think it's just good for the audience to kind of get a behind the scenes look at what all goes on with creators and kind of how they approach products or how companies approach these creators to talk about their products because there's a lot of stuff that goes on out there that a lot of people don't actually see. We've seen things recently where Insta360 has kind of been brought into the light because cameras that they've sent out to different creators, they have also kind of emailed them a little bit behind and said, it's okay if you don't let people know that this is a sponsored video, which I am hugely against because if I am watching a creator, I really do want to know if it is sponsored content or not. Now, my idea of sponsored content may be different than some people. So I kind of want to explain this because if you're somebody that watches this channel, I think it's just something that's nice to know. I think if a company sends you a product, it's not a sponsored video. And the reason I feel this way is because when you start off as a content creator, especially if you're reviewing products, everything that you review, you buy on your own. Everything comes out of your own pocket. You don't have any companies that are sending stuff out to you because you're not on anybody's radar yet. Now, once you get to that point, at first, it's exciting. It's exciting that you're getting these new products that you would normally have to pay for. And eventually it gets to a point where you're just getting all this stuff. You just don't see it the same. It's not that you're taking advantage of anything. It's just that it becomes work. And for me, YouTube is a full-time job. So it's a company sending me something. It's another product to talk about. And it does eventually get to a point where you're just not as overly excited about getting a product anymore. So it's part of the job. Now, there are things where companies start to pay money. That is sponsored content. There is also things where companies send people to locations to film with certain products or talk about a certain product. That is definitely sponsored content as well. And then there's ad reads, which is obviously sponsored content. But I don't believe that getting products is sponsored content. There are some people that will say, you know, this was sent to me, but then they'll explain how they approach things, which I think is a good thing to do. But the best way to kind of explain how I do things is a product sent to me, and it is all my opinion from there. There's some companies that try to reach out and say, you know, can you send us the video to look over and just kind of approve? That's not something I do. It's something that I've always, you know, stuck with. It has lost me a lot of, you know, content that I could talk about because companies just want to have that final approval over a video. Again, it's just not how I work. I'm just against things like that because I don't think a company should have final approval over a video that you're working on that is just your opinion anyway on that product. They know that that's what they're doing when they send you the product. So I don't understand really what it is they need to approve. Now, they'll say they need to look at it to make sure there's no false information for like technical specs and things like that. I kind of get that. I mean, I don't want to say something is Bluetooth 5.1 if it's technically Bluetooth 5.3, or, you know, if it has a certain Bluetooth codec playback that it doesn't have. So, I mean, I do get things like that. That is misinformation that can mislead people. And it's just something that could just be a hiccup on your own part or the creator's part. But I do want to go back to kind of how I feel like companies look at creators whenever they send out products, or if they're sending them somewhere, or if they're, you know, paying for whatever. There is this sense of ownership that I feel like companies feel like they have over creators. I mean, if a company sends me a product, that's simply all they're doing. I don't feel like I owe them anything. And I don't feel like they have any control over the content that I create. I feel like if you're sending me a product, you know how my channel works, you know how my style is and how I talk about things. Don't try to make me have this different approach to it, because then you're just kind of like a puppet with strings trying to control how I talk about your product and the way that I present it. And that's, again, it feels like you're working for them. And that is kind of the main beauty of being a content creator on YouTube. You work for yourself. You don't work for anybody. So you can say yes to what you want to say yes to, or say no to what you want to say no to. And one thing that kind of sparked this is there was a company that sent me 2 of their latest products. Now, this is one that was actually going to be paying to be a sponsored video. But once I got to testing the products and kind of running them through the paces that I normally do, I felt like they definitely were not worth the asking price. I feel like there's a lot of things that doesn't justify the price tag that they had. This is one that I went back to my brand manager and just said, this isn't going to be good for the company, and I don't think it's something they're going to ultimately want to pay for, because there's not a whole lot of positive that I have to say about these. So this was before the contract, phase. And we ultimately just decided it's probably best to walk away. I don't think the company's going to get their money's worth for paying just to have their product talked about on my channel. I've spent so much time building this audience that it's not worth talking positively about a product that I don't feel positive about, in chance that I'm going to hurt the audience that I've built, or make them spend money that I don't think is worth it in the end. So I kind of like to just stick to talking about things that I enjoy and things that I think my audience should know about, or some things that I find interesting. Now, when I do generally talk about things in a negative light, it's because I think the product is getting way too much positive attention out there, or I think there's a lot of things getting overlooked. And sometimes that could just simply be because these products are generally getting paid for most of the content creators out there. So I do notice a pattern sometimes of some shady stuff. I do notice, like, when a company reaches out to me presenting to pay X amount of dollars for me to talk about their product, if it's something I decide not to do, but then I see a lot of videos from other creators talking about those same things, it's like in the back of my mind, I know, they probably got paid that same amount that was offered to me. So there's a lot of red flags. There's a lot of things that I'm always questioning, and I think as an audience, it's definitely something you should do too. Ultimately, content creators are just here to give their own opinions. They're just talking about products in their own light, and as an audience, that's where you guys have control over who you watch, what you want to believe, and what you purchase. Like, nobody's forcing anybody to buy anything. So I think when, a lot of people put that on content creators, I don't necessarily think that's their fault. They're talking about something the way that they want to. And especially in my field, I talk about audio stuff, which is completely subjective. I'm going to like something that, somebody else is not going to like, or I may like something a certain way where others don't. I know that I'm a fan of bass, where I know a lot of audio channels aren't. They like to have things kind of sound a little more neutral, or have a little bit more treble than maybe something that I prefer. So you also kind of have to find somebody that has similar taste and opinions about these type of products that you do yourself. So always just watch a lot of different channels, watch who you trust, kind of look for patterns out there. And I know that some people think a lot of things are sponsored if it's all released on the certain date. That is simply an embargo. Companies send out a lot of products to people, but they say that a video cannot be made or the product cannot be talked about until a certain date. That's why you'll see a lot of videos on a certain product on a certain date. That's just because the embargo's been lifted. So everybody, it's like the floodgates open and they're talking about it. It doesn't mean that every single one of those got paid, but as a content creator, and this is where I kind of disagree with Gerald Undone's video, because he said, it doesn't matter if you're the first to talk about a product. You don't have to rush to be the first out there. And where I disagree with this is the tech community is all about what is the latest and greatest. They're very interested when a product first gets released, and then they kind of move on from that because they're looking at what's the next thing. I think if you cover a product 3 months later or 6 months later, and you weren't initially wanting to talk about it when it first released, you're not going to get the amount of views that you would have gotten if you released it in the beginning. Now, I do think a lot of people rush so much that they overlook things or that they didn't fully test them. And this is where the content creator has to take a little bit more responsibility when they're talking about products. Make sure you spend the time with them. Make sure you're running it through its paces, and like you fully believe everything that you're going to say. It's really hard to go back and say, I made a mistake, because you don't want to make a video on a product again just to correct things that you may have said in a previous video. It just doesn't look good, and it's not something you're going to ultimately want to waste your time on as a content creator. And so the last thing that I want to talk about is brand loyalty. Now, there are certain companies that I like. There are certain companies when they put out a new product, like, I'm all for checking it out. I get excited still, even as a content creator, on certain products, But what I've noticed again throughout the years is brands don't necessarily have loyalty to creators. And I really don't feel like they should, but I do feel like they should be a little more receptive to criticism. Sennheiser, I'm gonna use them as like the perfect example. I absolutely love most of their headphones, most of their earbuds. I've reviewed them for years. I had so many of their products sent to me. And then one time I had a wireless mic sent to me that I did a video on, and I had issues with it. There were things that I didn't like about it, and I said it in the video. And because of that one video on a product that usually doesn't even appeal to the audience on my channel, I stopped getting stuff from Sennheiser. They just stopped right from that point on. So I don't get their latest earbuds, I don't get their latest headphones, I don't get anything from Sennheiser, no communication, which is fine. I've had this happen with other companies. I've talked about their products for years, just positive things I loved about them. And then when I run into a product that I'm not a huge fan of, and I say that, if they don't like it, they can just, scratch your name off of a list. Just kind of like flip a switch and you'll get nothing from them anymore. And they've kind of accepted that we're not going to take that chance that they're going to say negative stuff about our products. And I think this is where a lot of creators kind of walk this fine line where they don't want to say things because they don't want to lose opportunities with these companies. I've been doing this 10 years now. I've gotten to a point where I don't feel like I have to walk on eggshells. I don't feel like I have to watch what I say. I can pretty much say whatever I want to. And then I have to kind of deal with whatever repercussions come from that. If I don't get products from a certain company, I can live with that. If I piss off a certain amount of people because they just love this brand and I just said something negative about one of their favorite brands, I can deal with that too. I've gotten to a point that was something that I used to worry about in the beginning, and it's not so much a concern anymore. Because in the end, I have to love what I do. I have to love the things that I talk about, and I have to kind of live with not liking a product or liking a product and then putting that video out to you guys to be able to watch. So that's kind of how I approach things. And I think content creators, every now and then should do videos where their audience knows how they approach things or how they talk about things, because then it just gives you peace of mind to what you're watching or who you're watching or what opinion they give, if you believe it or not. I don't know. This could just be rambling, but Gerald Undone's video, I felt like talked about a lot of important things, and it didn't really just apply to camera reviewers. I think it applies to tech reviewers and just content creators in general. So I kind of wanted to just give my opinion on things so my audience knows. But guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for checking out all the other videos. And as always, make sure to stay tuned for more.